$1 bill, yo.
Okay, yep, so we just started the trial of Kane. So
Correct.
I got a lot of questions and pushbacks on this one at the beginning because it was a very short campaign. And there was actually a very, very good reason that it had to be a short one. And my response was to the people saying, it's not really worth it. You guys have a wipe coming. We're just going to bow out. My response was, yeah, okay, that's probably a good idea to take a break every now and then. Because the other option that we had was to have a 3-week campaign.
Right.
But that would have caused issues. So what's coming down the pipe, Mr. Blair, that would have caused issues?
Well, in 5.8.6,
The next version coming out.
we have a wipe.
Right, and that version was just not ready yet.
And it wasn't ready to go. It was close, but not quite there.
Yep.
We needed to start the campaign, and we have the wipe coming. So that's going to focus a lot of things.
And that's coming literally in the next week, right?
We are trying to do pencils down today on that branch.
Right.
So pencils down for us means it goes into the final baking process. Developers stop putting stuff in there because every time you put something in, odds of it exploding and breaking something is very high, right? As we all know. So we kind of let it kind of cook there for a couple days, and then we'll push it out sometime next week.
Okay, and so what is it? I know the answer, but I'm going to feed you the questions anyway. What is it that's coming in this new version that is requiring us to do a wipe?
So we have updated the way that we deal with armor.
Yes, thankfully, finally.
The way we craft armor. So Todd's been grilling me on this one for, about a year and a half.
It's probably been a year. I never liked the fact that our armor gave you plus to max hit points. I just thought that was weird.
Yes. So we should show what the new armor looks like. So if you look at it...
That's Debbie Sue.
That was Debbie Sue.
What?
There you go. Okay, so here's an example of a new piece of armor, and you can tell we've slimmed down everything in the tooltip. There's one armor number now, and there is no health on it.
Okay, so let's talk about that one armor number. So what was the purpose of that? Is it actually changing a bunch of stuff, or is it just information?
It's just information, and it's one stop, easy. You look at it, and you're like, oh, this one's better than this one.
So it's like AC in the old D&D
correct,
days.
basically.
Got it.
The more of it, you want as much of it as you can get, it will do the same thing it used to do, which is mitigate damage.
Okay.
Right.
Which I prefer way over maximum health.
Right.
Damage reduction and or damage resistance. Either
So
one
prior,
I think are better than health addition, max health.
The health was in the off pieces too.
Yeah, I didn't like any of it.
Right. So now there's armor in all 4 pieces.
Okay.
So we might see a game again of, hey, I'm going to wear a little bit of leather and I'm going to wear a little bit of plate.
Right. Yep. I in general, and we haven't done all of this, but I'd like to open up the armor selections in general a little more than we have. Right. Is I like and I drove this. I drove the whole we should have more specialized armor. But now that I'm in and playing, I'm like, it just doesn't lead to enough choice for a lot of the characters. So I kind of want to open it back up. Part of that was normalizing armor and communicating better what armor does, right? Okay, so the other side of that, though, was all that max health that I told you to pull off the armor. What happened to that? Where did that go?
People have been playing with those current health values. So we sucked all of that health value out. We divvied it up into little pieces as we are wont to do. Some of it comes from leveling your character. So every time you level up, you will see a bump in your max health.
Okay, that's nice.
And the the constitution stat. I'm sorry.
You mean the dump stat
attribution.
Of constitution that
Yes.
nobody cared about because it was worthless?
Yes, so now it gives you 8 points of health per point.
So now it's entirely overpowered and it's the only stat that matters.
So what we had to do was we had to bump the dex stat, so crit and attack power also goes up. So they're basically, they're equivalent. We're trying to make them equivalent. It's hard as shit.
Yeah, I'm with you. But
Right.
it is better. So a lot of that health that was previously on the armors has been moved over to con, so that now when you increase your con stat, it's a noticeable increase. What is it? +8 per?
It's +8 right now. Again, we're at the minor tweaking phase. We had a big tweak where we tried it with like, hey, let's just take all the level up stuff, and it was just too much.
Okay.
So again, we tweaked back to where we are right now.
With you. I love the new direction, though. I think it's much better. It's better for armor and it's better for con. You never want to have one stat that's just a dump stat.
Right.
Now, it's not uncommon that for a given class, you'll have one stat or 2 stats as a dump stat. That's kind of normal for games. But anytime you have a situation where for every class, this one's the dump stat, that's a problem.
Right.
So.
And one of the pieces you may have missed was we doubled the amount of max support power a healer can have, the healer classes. So what that means is their heals will also start doing more damage. So when you look at the entirety of combat now, there's a couple new moving parts in there.
Yeah.
Healers will be healing for a bit more. Specific classes that had a lot of health before may have less if they didn't put some into con, right? So there's the knobs have just been tweaked.
Well, it sounds like a terrible solution unless you also did something to crafting. Did you do anything with crafting of armors? This is your only chance to save everything you just told me.
Yes, absolutely.
You did?
Yes.
Did you make it more clicks and more steps?
We actually reduced the amount of clicks.
All right,
steps.
okay,
Look at
I'm
that.
back
You're
back
back
in.
You're
Yep,
back?
I'm back in.
So before I cut out 9 of the clicks and steps
That's cool.
per piece of armor. Unfortunately, as we found, so we put a lot of optional stuff in because optional stuff is fun. But for the players, it became required stuff. So it wasn't optional, which meant that all those layers that we used to have in there to kind of boost the mitigation value, they all did all of them all of the time.
Yeah.
Which was just, without factories or whatever, it was a lot of clicks. So by cutting out 9 of those items, great. Shields also saw an update too. I think we have a picture of a new shield.
Oh, do we? Good.
Yes, because Todd was also writing me about shields.
Well, I didn't like the way shields were handled.
And now
And
you
I'm
look
not
at
sure that I do now, but I know I didn't before.
now it has armor.
what you got?
You'll notice it has armor just like the
Okay,
piece of armor you saw before.
That's a good one. Because
Right.
at one point it was just like a offhanded weapon, effectively.
Correct,
Right?
because we really didn't have the ability to put armor in the offhand.
Okay.
So we got some little tweaks to make it more like it's a piece of armor and it's
Potentially a weapon.
and potentially has
yeah,
stats, and
yeah.
you need it to activate like the knights, some of their powers.
Yeah,
right.
shield
So
slam.
those are much better as well.
Okay.
And additionally, so we're going to show that stuff now. Is along with all this crafting stuff, we got some cool pieces that just kind of came along with fixing some of the armor stuff.
Okay.
Which is we now have the ability to have additive slots on a piece of armor, and we can hide it from the player unless they have a piece of gear.
Oh,
equipped.
I saw that. That was really, really cool, actually. So now I have to have a particular type of blacksmith hammer to open up the ability to do this additive on this item.
Correct. So let's show the alchemy one because we sent some screenshots over to our video producer.
Do we have that one?
We do. Okay, so here's an example of one of the new loot items you can find.
It's like you're staring off wistfully into space,
I know,
by the
it is.
way, because there's a monitor right over there.
Well, so I am a bit wistful about it because this has actually been so much fun for me.
Okay.
Right, this particular part where, and it's also one of the things that is very unique to Crowfall's crafting now, which is nobody else dynamically adds and removes ingredient slots. You get a recipe and the recipe is fixed. And that recipe to make that thing is always that thing. We're actually now able to give you loot objects that you can find in the world.
Yep.
And those things will add more slots on the fly to your recipes.
Giving them mostly through war tribes?
Right now, yes, War Tribes is our
and collection, I guess. We'll add more
Correct.
plants and stuff like that.
So here's a slot where you would equip that.
Okay.
It goes in your belt accessory slot. And show me Alchemy 2, please. Okay, so there is the 2 slots that you can see in there that got added, the little plus ones.
All right.
There should be a shot of that without the plus guys in there. I'm just waiting for him to do the shot so people have time. This is actually the necromancy one right here. Yeah. Okay, so here's the alchemy one. Here's what a normal player's recipe looks like.
Okay.
Everybody gets this one, they open it, and then all of a sudden you're adventuring the world, you're killing war tribes, you get a cool blue drop, which happens to be, in this case, the Emerald Tablet, and you equip the Emerald Tablet, and show us the Emerald Tablet equipped.
It's almost like this is an area we could improve in our live stream.
I numbered them for him.
Did you?
I did. It says 1, 2, 3, 4.
Are you going in the right order, though? Because I would
Yes.
absolutely not be going in the right order. I would go like 1, 5, orange. I'd be all over the place.
So when you equip the object, it goes ahead and it puts those 2 little slots there. Those, those 2 added
cool.
slots. And these objects are also limited use. So every time you craft
They're
one,
charged, right?
it will reduce the count by 1. So what's great about this from a design standpoint is we've now created another game loop.
Yeah.
Which is literally the combatants are out there.
It's another feedback loop, right, between combatants and
Exactly.
and
They're out there,
right,
they're
absolutely.
killing stuff. They get these loot objects, they come back, they sell them to the crafters. The crafters use those objects to make better stuff to sell to the combatants, which the combatants go out to get more money.
Cool.
And it just creates this nice loop between the crafters and the combatants.
Cool.
Which is great, and I love where we've gone with this direction. And I think, again, it's one of the unique things that we do on Crowfall is adding of those slots dynamically. And you'll see a lot of new content in the next update about that.
Cool.
The question was, now that you're giving us so many more things to loot and store, What's the status on getting more storage?
Oh God, I need to do that.
I love it. Come on, tell us, Todd. What are we going to do about inventory?
Okay, so we're going to fix it. It's a technical limitation is the problem. That's actually the issue. Is it just has to do with right now all of that stuff is stored in the player record, which means the player record gets really, really, really big, and if it gets big enough, it can cause horrible problems. We're moving that stuff. We basically have a refactor going right now in our persistence system, which is going to open up that and make it not a problem anymore. It's a large system, and we're also at the same time prepping it to be ready for real scale at launch. So it's a large undertaking as well.
Well, let's just talk about some of the numbers.
Okay.
Right? Because it seems more daunting when you're actually like, okay, so if a character can have 300 slots,
okay,
what does that mean if we have 1,000 characters for database storage?
Right.
What does that mean if we have 10,000 characters for database storage? What does it mean if we have 100,000 characters for database storage?
It's actually worse than that for us.
Okay.
Because we have people can draw in our game can drop parcels of land.
Correct.
Right? So I can actually drop a village somewhere, and that means that I can also pick up a parcel of land. I could pick up a village, and in that village there could be 50 buildings, and in each of those buildings there could be a vendor, and on each of those vendors there could be an entire plethora of items for sale, one of which could be a parcel. A village parcel, which could have its own set of buildings and its own vendors and its own... So you see where this is going. It becomes very, very quickly a problem. So we're going to have to put in some hard walls as well. Like we can't just have somebody recursively having...
It's a ship in a bottle is what it is, with a ship in a bottle.
So we can't have that. But on top of that, we just have to... We have to have some limits. Now, the limits that we have in place right now are draconian.
Yes,
like, they
absolutely.
are harsh limits. I get it. We're trying to figure out some coping mechanisms to help you guys deal with this in the meantime. Just in this last build, I went to Mr. Blair and I said, okay, I know the banking thing sucks so bad. Can we just up the stack counts for ore and stone and wood? Just for those three.
Yep.
Give me 200. Give me 500. What can you give me? And we went and looked at it, and the answer was we couldn't change that because it was unfortunately just that the design tables had already moved on to a point where there was no way to go back and fix that.
That was in 5.8.5.
In 5.8.5 because the tables had already been updated for all the armor changes, which were not supported in 5.8.5. So the answer was, no, I can't even do that, Todd. I can't even increase stack count. So I don't have a good solution for you, but I do know that it sucks.
Well, in 5.8.6, we have doubled it.
Oh, you have? Okay,
in
good.
5.8.6, which is on test right now.
Okay.
The stack count is up to 200.
Okay, so that I mean, it's still not nearly enough, but I'm also a little nervous to we could ramp it up to 1,000 or 5,000, but then when we inevitably have to settle it back down to where it's actually
once we solve the tech problem,
then everybody's going to be really, really angry and pissed. So
right.
It's always we try to do the best we can. The game is still in pre-alpha. I'm sorry, we're trying to get persistence done. When we get it done, we will fix the storage issue. I know that it's a big problem, and we'll get it fixed.
I love pain points like this, though.
You do?
Yeah,
because you hate fun.
No,
right?
because it shows us exactly where the burning is right now.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Right? So the burning that we suffer right now, prioritize it for us, and it bumps it to the top.
Yeah,
We're like,
that's absolutely true.
We have to fix that issue now because it's going to suck, and I'm sorry for you guys who are dealing with it right now, but it will get better for the future.
It will. And in the meantime, we'll try coping mechanics where we can to try and make things go a little bit easier.
Okay, another question on leather.
What did they think of that first answer? Did they hate it? I bet they hated it. I kind of hate it, so I don't blame them.
They definitely want more storage.
Okay,
I'm going to leave it there.
I hear you loud and clear.
Not enough, all in caps.
Not enough.
Yeah, not enough.
Yeah, not enough.
So another question is, why does leather take more resources than mail and plate? And why can't it be more equivalent? And it's also harder to farm.
Well, the process of curing leather. No, I don't have any idea.
No.
Why does it take
more?
Right,
it's actually very equivalent now.
Okay.
And
with the recent round of changes?
With the recent rounds of changes, it's much more equivalent. And we always see it as a little easier to farm the leather because you're out there killing those NPCs anyways.
Okay.
Right? The leather is just something you get in it's a bonus. For kill, you get XP, you get loot, and you also get this big giant stack of leather.
Okay.
Right?
So I kind of hear what you're saying, but I also kind of think the rock that I'm banging on doesn't fight back. So I don't know that I would say it's necessarily easier.
Yeah.
I'm with you on you can get it at the same time,
right.
so you can parallelize.
Basically, you're doing multiple. You're doing
sense.
advancement at multiple times.
So one thing that we've talked about a lot and we've never actually done, but I want to do is mother loads for leather, right, and for meat, which is basically a POI that is a large like dragon carcass or
Right.
something like that, that is actually something you can fight over, almost in the same way that a quarry produces stone
Yep.
or whatever. I do think that would be pretty cool.
I do as well. It's
So-
just we need some time to play with that kind
Yep.
of thing. Right. That's on my kind of board is like, hey, let's do this fun thing when we get some time.
At some point, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
And there was another question there is why can't it be as good? Well, leather is actually really good. It gives you
It is now. They're all much more
correct.
normalized now.
Leather got bumped up a little bit on its base, but since it has built-in damage and healing bonuses, that's the kind of trade-off that can be made for armor.
Yeah.
Right, between the plate and leather. We've always struggled with, should we penalize them like they move slower or whatever? And we found that every time we do that, it's gone across like a bag of bricks.
Well, actually, so let me bring this up too. Is this was I know this is in our list of questions here, but another change happened in crafting with whites, and so I think that's one that probably will be very well received.
Oh
right?
yeah, that's one of our questions. But yeah, we bumped them up
Let's jump to it now.
from 4 pips
We
to
got
5
there
pips
organically.
Yep.
Okay.
We just made it there. So crafting now for poor is still 4 pips, common is 5 pips, and then green is up to 7 pips.
Okay.
So we're kind of bumping up the common quality a little bit, but not so much that the higher qualities feel marginalized.
No, it's really we were closing the gap a bit. I think
Basically.
that's a better way to say it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There you go. Any more questions,
That
WC?
was two. Any other live questions you want to ask, or should we jump into our pre-baked questions that we
I
got?
guess there's one question you might want to hit, which is, do you think you're going too hardcore for your average Joe players? How does the mid-tier or new beginner start to latch on to this new system?
Into what new system? The
It's
game
probably
as a whole?
probably
or-
talking about armor.
Yeah,
crafting
the
in general.
armor, right.
Okay.
Crafting in general.
I actually think, so having like an armor class number clearly was a move towards making the system more understandable.
And the smaller amount of components was also
Yep, that
a move
also
to make
helps
it.
as well.
But there's also, this is a player-run economy. That's one of the things that we've been
Right.
selling all along. So the master crafters need people to buy their stuff.
Yeah.
Right? They just absolutely need somebody to come buy the stuff from their vendors. Otherwise, their gameplay suffers because no one's buying their stuff.
So here, give me the beginning of the question real quick, Gabby, because I want to make sure that I answer it
The
accurately.
question was, do you think you're going too hardcore for your average Joe players?
So I want to answer that quickly, which is yeah. I think that's the intent, is to the average Joe player, somebody who's like, all I play is Diablo. We always will likely be too hardcore for that player, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we are kind of a hardcore game. Now, I'm trying to blend it a little bit and make it more approachable for people that maybe they don't want to just get dumped into the deep end of the pool with the sharks immediately. By the way, the sharks hang out in swim pools now. Did you know that? It's terrifying. It started in Florida recently.
What?
Yeah, it's horrible. So anyway, we don't want to dump them into the deep end of the pool with the sharks where they don't know how to play the game. So that's why I wanted to pull God's Reach out and make it a place that people could actually learn how to play our game. But at the end of the day, like we do have, it's a PvP game, right? It's a territory conquest game,
Right.
and it is a player-driven economy. And those things are not like as casual as a average Joe gamer is going to appreciate. So it's that's the thing. That's just the way we are. I'm not going to apologize for it. That's the game we set out to build.
Right.
So
I mean, we came up with these pillars at the beginning.
yeah,
and
that's it. That's our game.
We're
So-
actually trying to hit them and not just use them as kind of like
Absolutely.
buzzwords.
So
Like
where I think it's going to be a problem to the point where it actually means the product might not work, right? Like the new player experience, I'm going to fix that because I've got to. And at the end of the day, if I build a game that's only for the hardest or the hardcore, and as a result, we end up with a really tiny following who may love us, but we can't sustain the game going on. That's not good either, obviously. I've got to at least open it up enough to be able to get a critical mass of players. But, the idea that like we're going to go after the WoW market or something like that, we're not going to. So I'm sorry, that's not. Thank you for checking out the game. That's not us. So.
And it's
But
Yeah.
what we
also
are going to do,
good-
we're going to do really well. That's been my promise from day one, and I still
It's
intend to
good
live
to
up to
mention
that.
God's Reach because I think that's the opportunity to get your feet wet, get acclimated, learn some of the systems, and also I've seen people posting about joining guilds.
Yeah,
So that's
no,
another
absolutely.
great
So
way to
I
get
mean,
introduced.
it's not that our game can't be played solo. It absolutely can. It can't. It's not that our game can't be played by somebody who doesn't want to go into the PvP areas. It absolutely can. But there's a layer of complexity and immersion that that I want to kind of instill into our game experience, and that's inherently something about that is less casual. It just kind of is, but you have to kind of pick one. Do you want that deep depth and immersion, or do you not? And I do. So if we have to give a little bit on the casual, or even a lot on the casual, I'm okay with that. I mean, that's the game we're making.
Some people are saying stick to the vision.
There you go.
There you go.
That's right. So what are you doing right now with the majors? So the miners. The
miners are from the war tribes.
There's still some on the vendors.
Correct.
Yes.
There's some learning ones on the vendors.
Okay.
Right, because we want to teach people who, like, what the hell are disciplines?
So we decided to leave those swappable. You can swap those.
You can swap the miners and you can swap the explorations.
Okay.
Those are on vendors right now. The miners come exclusively from the war tribes.
Okay.
You have a better chance the higher the rank of the parcel, as well as if it's a lieutenant or a chieftain or whatever, they have an increased chance to drop the miners. That's also where those fun chase items is what I like to call them, the crafting ones come from. And then the majors have been migrated to the night spawn versions of the NPCs in the world.
Oh, there's some information for you. You guys probably didn't know yet. So
Correct. So
they've been moved to the Hunger Monsters.
Basically, the Hunger Monsters, and
Are they going to stay there?
No.
Okay.
Eventually, they will go onto the Thralls, which will also only spawn at nighttime. Okay. So I think we're going to get some good data out of this. Just basically, how many of these things do we need to put into the world?
Okay.
And all of that. However, there you have it.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, next question. Why do you hate Stoneborn and Half-Elves so much?
We love the Stoneborn and the Half-Elves.
Really?
Yeah,
Doesn't seem like it.
Stoneborn actually get the highest con now in the new system.
Okay.
So
so they'll get a big.
They should get a big buff. Yeah. The Half-Elves, they need a little bit of love in. It's just that the passive stuff doesn't sell as well. I think it's not as blingy as some of the other things that we have in there. And the Half-Elves need a little thing. I really didn't want to do it now. It's on my board to reevaluate all of the racial stuff.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. But it does. I mean, while other things are in flux. For example, the new client controller is currently being tested. Right, it's making its way through the development pipeline. That will change things like movement speed and dodge and things like that.
Yes.
So right now, for example, centaurs can go hop, hop, hop crazy. I told people don't bother to fix it, and the reason is, any time we spend right now fixing that is going to be wasted effort because the new client controller is coming online. We're going to have to go back and fix it again anyway.
Yep.
So as I told somebody recently when they asked, I said, well, enjoy it while you can. Yeah, it's a little broken right now. It won't be forever, but it's not worth fixing. So
anyways, the sum of that one, we definitely will make another race pass going forward.
What's up with Frostweaver? Why do you hate Frostweaver?
Why do I hate Frostweaver? I love the Frostweaver.
It's going to be overpowered when you finally get it done, right?
It is the.
It is.
It is.
You're supposed to say no.
It's the nature of the thing. It's like always the current hotness. We either overtune or undertune.
So when we're all done, we need to go back to the Knight because he was the very first one, and we need to make him the coolest. I'm calling it now.
The Secular Knight is pretty cool.
Okay.
He's the tanky one, and he gets the shield bash procs all the time, and tower shields. I did some work to make the tower shields.
Okay.
There's a placeholder.
Sorry, I didn't mean to drag you off on Knight. We don't even have a picture of the Knight. So, but back to Frostweaver.
Frostweaver. We have the tech in the next milestone being worked on.
Okay.
Design has the powers stubbed out. We're waiting for the tech to push them forward.
How are we doing on art?
The art is complete for all of the stuff that you don't know about that the Frostweaver is getting related to art, which was extensive. It was 3x any of the other characters we made.
Yeah.
So they have a lot more art, and I'm not talking about effects.
Cool.
So there's their hint. So it is in the pipe, and there you go.
There we go. All right.
There was a question while you're on things that are coming.
Yeah.
Thief and Scout, are those coming?
Thief and Scout.
So Thief is specifically pickpocketing, which you know that I'm a fan of, and I want to get to
I'm a huge fan of. Remember, I made one on a stream one time.
You did, I know, and they keep bringing it up. So I still want that. And the other one is Scouting, and Scouting I have ideas for. It's just time, guys. I mean, it's just ultimately you have to get all of the major pieces in before we can go and start adding all the specialty stuff. And so, yes, I do intend to get to them. We just haven't gotten to them yet. Speaking of scouting and thieving and spying, though, we do have a change coming to the /who command. Did that go out yet?
I thought it went out in 5.8.5.
If it didn't go out yet, it's probably on test right now. But we moved the /who over to be an admin command because it was not intended to be used as a spying tool.
Correct.
Certainly not by friendly friendly alt accounts.
Yeah,
So-
we're not too keen on that, and we have plans for other things in the future.
Yeah, no, we've got some other stuff that we're looking at. Well, there's a whole recut of Death and Respawn that's coming in 590, right?
Yes.
We got a whole lot of, and I'm hoping it's the last one. That's my expectation.
Please let this
It
be
is
the last Death and
one.
Respawn.
And then what was the other? Oh, and then Arrival through a rune gate. We're going to address that problem as well because it's a choke point problem.
That's the one that I was alluding to, yeah.
Every game that has rune gates or any kind of stargates or whatever, they seem to have these kind of problems, and so we need to deal
Yeah,
with
we
that.
are not unique in that.
Nope.
We are not
There's
unique in
something
that,
we
and there's something we need to
deal with. Okay, here's one that we got to hit before we're out.
All right.
Elementalist, totally OP, so broken. What are you going to do with it?
So right now, I mean, Mark and I talk about this honestly on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Right. We're just kind of, do we want the hard counters? Do we not want the hard counters?
Generally, the approach I seem to see from the community is no. We don't want hard. We want soft.
So one of the things we want to see first, however, is the byproducts of the wipe on 586,
Okay.
as well as all of the new methods to get disciplines. One of the things that we definitely know there's a problem with is people are able to hot swap.
Yeah.
Basically, you can change disciplines at will.
Yeah. Majors.
Right?
You mean.
Majors,
Yeah.
even, which is, I can see that I'm going to fight these kind of guys in the distance. Let me load out the counters to those guys.
Okay.
And that is vastly different than saying, I'm going to make a knight who's good at
Fighting
countering.
confessors or whatever.
And you're stuck with that.
Yeah, but Elementalist specifically is too many of the damage types, right? That's the problem with that one. Is it's not just single hard counter; it's bunch of hard counters. Correct?
And we have with Scarecrow, for example, where you stop piercing, you basically lock out assassins as well as rangers who use piercing arrows,
Okay.
right? So we have a lot of these hard counters. And again, Mark's biggest thing is that you can do it on the fly now.
Yeah, so we'll definitely, I think we should fix that. But I think it would also be, so this was a suggestion, I don't know if I talked to you about it, but I thought it was a pretty good one, which was allowing us to have crafting components that produce the same type of item, but they change or modify the damage type, which would be kind of cool. Like a fire sword that actually does fire damage.
Sure, yeah.
Which would be pretty neat, especially if we tied that into your system where it was charged, where you can't just make them infinitely, right?
Sure.
You have to-
I have a prototype of a couple of those.
I think that would actually be really cool.
I never pushed it, also because of the effect support.
Yeah.
Because then
Well,
at that
there's
point,
that's true.
right, it's like, hell, hey, that, because it was a cleric hammer that did electricity damage.
But I can promise you that there are a section of the people even watching right now and the people who watch this in the future that are going to say, I don't give a shit how it looks. I think that sounds cool. Please do it. And you
Yeah.
can add the effect later. And that's a valid point. Person who I just invented, you made a very valid point.
Your straw man who you just invented?
Yes.
He's cheering you on right now.
He is.
He's
And
in
I
fact
think,
cheering.
I think if Debbie Sue looks at the chat, I think that we'll find that person does actually exist.
Yeah.
So, okay. There you go. There's some elementalist stuff. Those are crappy questions.
What else we
got? Oh, storage.
Storage.
We already talked about. I don't know what that.
Oh,
one
you know what?
is.
Let's talk about the bow and quiver one. Because
Okay.
I get this one on a daily basis. Which is, can you please explain bow and quiver damage combination?
Sure.
Right.
No, I mean I can't, but you can for
And,
sure.
well, I put the formula right here.
Okay.
That is literally the code from the game, which is it literally takes the weapon damage of your bow and the
Okay.
ammo damage of your bow and or quiver. Oh, hey, look, we got a picture of some rangers up there. And it adds them together, and then it uses that value. It adds some other things in there too, but it literally adds them. They have equal weight contribution. So bows and quivers are supposed to, let's assume everything's working.
Okay.
And if you look at that code, you would assume that works. Which is
I
literally
wouldn't.
that plus that
I'm
plus
not-
that plus that.
They don't even let me look at code anymore, right? Much less touch it. So yeah, I'm not allowed in the room when the open heart surgery is happening.
Yeah, so A plus B plus C plus D equals
You
whatever.
would assume that would work.
You would assume that would work.
All right.
So yes, I've looked at it several times. I looked at it with an engineer, and we are certain that it's adding those values and increasing your damage.
Okay.
So I just wanted to put that one out there because that one comes up a lot, and it's like, why won't you fix this? And I'm like, because it's not broken.
All right. So I think we should shift back over to any other live questions because we only got a few minutes left, right?
Okay, so one question is, are majors going to be dropped from Thralls, or is the main component of majors being dropped from Thralls?
When the thralls go in, the idea is it will be a crafting component. it will be the soul gem of that type of thing.
Yeah, so I think, yes, the Thrall will be the primary component. You'll need other components as well. And that's not the only thing that the Thrall soul gems will be used for. They'll have other uses as well.
Right.
That's it's one of the major pieces, actually. It's kind of, the good news is we're narrowing down on these kind of major things that we talked about years ago and getting them into the game. Thralls is now one of them. And we have a lot of the pieces that I wanted. Like, for example, I wanted the idea that Thralls are ghost and therefore they only show up at night.
Right.
Well, we can kind of do that now because our hunger creatures only show up at night. They can spawn at night, and then if the sunlight comes and hits them, they despawn. So we can use that code again. So, I do think that it's still definitely on the list. It's something we want to get. We don't have the ghostly shader for Thralls yet.
Correct.
And so I think that'll be kind of goofy looking. We need to get that in. Otherwise, we'll just like. There's Bob. He's walking around. Oh, he disappeared. You know, that'll be kind of.
And we're also missing the random spawners, but that's one of the things we're going to get as well.
We need to get that as well because I don't want you sitting and camping. The ghost comes right here.
He always spawns at this spot
every 7 minutes. Yeah, that's kind of goofy. I want these things to be a little bit more ephemeral.
But we are much closer.
Yeah, we are. We've got most of the pieces. And then I also didn't want. I would rather these particular mobs. I would like them when they drop loot. I would like to drop the loot as dubers because I don't want to drop a mob ghost corpse to the ground. I think that will be incredibly stupid. So.
And that engineering has assured me that is
doesn't
within reach.
Doesn't seem that hard to me. Of course, nothing seems that hard to me. I always like, that seems really easy. Why would that take more than 2 days? They're like, that is 6 months worth of work. Get to work. You got 2 days.
So there was a question that they want asked about CC being useless. Unless
Who's CC?
You can
Crowd
break
control.
it. Yeah, you can break it if you run out of all your CC. You have mechanics that give you CC immunity. So they're saying CC feels useless. How do you feel about that?
It's not just that, hey, Blair, we think there's a balance problem over here you might want to look at. It's useless. It is absolutely a waste. You should never have done it.
We should just pull it out.
You should pull it out of the game. It is absolutely useless.
Okay, so crowd control is always a contentious issue because it sucks to be crowd control.
And because it is kind of useless in our game.
It just sucks. In every game you play to be crowd control, as the dude being crowd control.
Yeah, no, that's true.
It's fun for me to stunt Todd and just beat the hell out of him.
Anything that locks me out of gameplay is really, really obnoxious.
Right, so what we do is...
we do have some of those, and they are pretty obnoxious.
But we give you a way to say, hey, you can use a retaliate to get out of it.
Yeah.
And when you run out of retaliate juice, more or less, you can't retaliate anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And then we also have some crowd control immunity in there, just in case that you have just been crowd controlled to death. Because we don't want people going, you know what? I got stunned and I couldn't use any of my powers and I just sat there and died.
Actually, so I'll say in every game that includes stun, at some point somebody figures out a way to chain stun something to where it never gets to respond, and they can basically kill anything in the game that way. That's happened. I remember even in Wizard, right, turn-based combat, they were like, oh, we put in a stun. I was like, it's going to screw us. It's going to screw us. I'm just letting you know, every game you put a stun in, somebody figures out a way to chain it to where the other person can never, and I'll be damned, like a month or two later, somebody figured out a way. And they specifically put in counters to try and keep that from happening. Nope, they were killing the hardest stuff in the game
with stuns. Just
by stunning it and into submission. So, yes.
Yes, stuns are contentious. And in an action combat game, we don't want you to be stunned. We want you to actually be able to react to it. Okay. Right, so if somebody stuns you, we give you a way to get out of it.
Okay. Do you think that we are giving away too many ways to get out of it, or too much immunity?
We might be giving too many ways, but that's always a tweak.
Looking at, right?
Yeah. We have some specific talents in the talent trees that in fact enable certain specs to actually get out of it easier.
Okay.
And if a lot of people are playing those specs, it's going to seem like CC. The specs that do center on stuns are a little less useful.
Okay.
So I could see that. But yeah, it's rough because there's no real good clear-cut answer to having stuns and having counters to them.
Okay.
And it's a balance line. So
take a look at it. What else you got,
right.
Cece?
The next one I had is I have a question about, will disciplines be permanent on vessels, or will we be able to remove them in the future?
Okay, so we touched on that earlier, but I guess we can go ahead and talk about it just to make it very, very clear. So the current plan is that minors and exploration ones are hot swappable, but majors are a decision that you make for this vessel, and once you make it, you've made it.
Correct.
Right?
So you are literally building the Knight Juggernaut spec, and that's the way you're going, and it's stuck in there.
Yep.
And if you want a new one, gotta go make a new Knight.
Yeah, but on the good side, that's not a horribly arduous process.
Which is why we made leveling much faster.
We made it super faster, and we added sacrifice so that once you've already been through it, you can kind of twink yourself back up just by dumping stuff into a wood chipper and getting levels out of it.
Yes.
So,
love the wood chipper.
Yeah. So I think part of the thought we had on that was that that people won't be doing that with high quality vessels. People will be doing rolling with low quality vessels to try. It's basically try before you buy, right? So the idea is it's super fast to just churn through whites. So because we're trying to make a giant exploration tree of different character builds, because that's replayability. If I'm looking for like what's my perfect min-maxed version of an elven archer, right? I can min-max it and try and roll a bunch if I want to. If I don't, because I don't care about squeezing that last 0.001%, I don't have to. But a lot of people do, and if they do, they can do it really fast on a white to get the template that they want, and then they can say, okay, this is worth a little bit more investment. And I think it's a reasonable approach.
I do as well.
I mean, a lot of it was Shadowbane derived, right? We saw a lot of Shadowbane players where that's what they would do, is they would go through and they would create new characters, level them up, just to try out that build, and then,
It's Shadowbane, it's Diablo 2. I mean, that was the thing in those days, was you just made lots of characters.
Yeah.
And you're like, I have an idea for a fun character. It may not work at all,
but I want to try it.
But I want to try it.
And what's cool about that is occasionally you find interesting new combinations that other people haven't tried, and they work really well. And that's the big payoff, right? Is when you actually find ones like, wow, that's a really unique... I actually, so going back to my D&D gaming, in 5th edition, I made a Eladrin Gloomstalker sorcerer. Totally a bizarre, weird build. He's amazing. He's like completely overpowered. But that was really cool. That was great for me because it basically, it allows you to do the metagame of I'm playing this game even when I'm not playing.
Right, because you're thinking about it when you're not playing.
Yeah, I'm digging around on D&D Beyond and I'm checking out different things. Ooh, that feat would go really well. I probably should get that at about 8th level. I mean, I find that really fun. So hopefully you guys will too. And if not, then just make a character and don't worry about that last
level once
0.0001% of power. So.
All right.
There you go.
A next question is, what about sacrifice shards? XP values seem to be low.
No, actually, I think we need to probably take, so a balance pass over sacrifice values is probably due. I think some of that stuff was originally just kind of placed in there. Like gold is still in there on a
you can still sacrifice gold.
So we do know that we need. I mean, you can tell that the sacrifice system is a Rev 1 because you open the UI and there's a picture of Malachi there, and clearly that was not the intention. So
in Sacrifice V2 we've got and we have the extra XP types for harvesting.
Right,
for
yeah, we've got that coming too.
Right,
That's right.
so
the experience, the GD is titled Grant Experience for All the Things, or something like that. Yeah.
So we didn't want to make a pass now, like a serious pass, because right around the corner here comes Sacrifice V2.
Okay. Yep.
So there you go.
But yes, we do know that's an area we need to get back to.
I know we only have a few minutes left, but there's some questions about what they're going to see in the next update, like, what will the character controller fix? Can you give us just a quick overview of what players would expect to see changing?
Not in 2 minutes.
Yeah, so character controller is basically how things move in the game. That's effectively what it means. So it touches everything from, as I'm moving around, how does the game feel? Which it definitely, in my opinion, could feel better. And the new client controller helps that quite a bit.
Yep.
It also smooths things out. Yep. So it makes it to when you're watching other people move around, they don't look herky-jerky as bad. It affects how monsters move around in the world. The crow, the feeling of when you're flying around as a crow, that's one of the things I just have not liked for a long time. We just kind of stuck it in. Technically, as you can tell, it's just the player controller, which is why your crow feels like he's stuck to the ground, and you can jump and you go like that, but it's just a little, it's because we didn't have a specific, like, how do you feel when you're flying controller. That's fixed. So it actually now feels like you're flying around the game.
Right.
So it touches like so much stuff in the game.
Touches how we do powers.
All the powers, right? And how many powers do we have now? Like 1,300?
There's probably 1,300.
Yeah, there's a lot. So so that's why this one is also taking so long to get done, is because it had tendrils that touched kind of everything in the game. So I'm excited about it. I really want to get you guys in to see it. We do have our testing group in testing it right now. But at the same time we're doing that, it's not just that, right? We also have all these other things coming in to that build as well.
Yeah, basically that character controller was the log jam, and all kinds of other engineering efforts were kind of piled up behind it.
Yeah.
So there's things that I've forgotten about. It's like, oh yeah, that's in 592.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's another one. It's another big one. We seem to basically be on a big momentous things kind of hit about every 4 months, 3 to 4 months.
Right.
It seems like.
Which was the pattern we had before, but we didn't have the live team.
Right.
So with the there's a group, mainly the designers are on the live team, and we're making these tweaks every 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
That's how we get new campaign modes, and that's like all of these new things.
And War Tribes, that's a great example.
So it feels like you're getting something new every couple of weeks, while these big giant efforts are coming in at our old milestone cadence pace.
Yeah, which is not uncommon for an MMO. It's just uncommon for an MMO that's in development.
Right.
It's usually after you've launched.
There's no live
that
team.
You have a development and a live team, but
Right.
and historically we've kind of been, we didn't have them separated, so everybody was kind of on both. But I think that's working out better for us now. Is that we have a couple people that are like, no, don't give them tasks. They just deal with live issues.
Right.
And over here we have everybody else. Go, run, get this.
And that's the team that's also responds to the current hot topic player issues too, right?
Yeah.
Right. So we're able to pivot very quickly in the live team.
To when we can. Unfortunately, that also means there are times when there are things they can't do, like increase my stat counts. What can you do? So, all right, I think that's about it for this time. Okay, but first I'm supposed to start with other things.
Thank you.
So there's entirely too many women in this room. I just want to say I'm
Trying to
completely
keep you
completely
on.
outnumbered. Yeah. Okay, so Trial of Kane. We're going to start with Trial of Kane a little bit this morning. So this is a bit of a weird one, and I know some of you are going to be like, well, it's way too short. You're probably right. So here's the thing. We have all of the armor changes that are coming down the pipe where we finally stripped all of the max health values off of armor and moved armor to being resistance based, and took all of the benefits that were on armor related to hit points and moved it in constitution, which makes it no longer a dump stat. I really want to get that stuff out to you guys, but I can't do it in the middle of a campaign. So my options, and it wasn't ready for a week, so my options were don't run a campaign at all, which I'd have been fine with, but a lot of people here did not like. Or we could just wait on the armor for a couple more weeks, which really sucks actually, because that means we'd have a build that's backing up all the other changes internally. Or run a really short campaign and just kind of deal with it. So we decided to go with that one. It's a short campaign. It also, though, has increased runestone drops because it is not a God's Reach campaign. So that was the other thing I thought would be good, is I want to get some testing in on that. I know it's a short one. You don't really necessarily love that. We are still in pre-alpha testing, though, so I'm just going to have to ask you to hang with me. What?
The crafting score.
Oh, yeah, and then on the leaderboards now we also have crafting score, which means in order for that to have bearing, we also put this as a no import campaign, which is a little weird as well. We do have a better solution for that going forward, which we will have in the future, the ability to have another knob on campaigns, which is equipment import only. So I can't just bring in a massive amount of gold or giant stacks of resources. I can only bring in equipment, so I think that'll help as well. All of that stuff is coming. So anyway, new trial is starting. It's going to be a short one, but it should put us in a good position.
Now, I've seen a lot of questions about the win conditions for Trial of Kane. There's some confusion about the crafted items, and I thought we were pretty clear with it, but it sounds like there were still a lot of people who didn't understand. Like, if I craft something and I give it to you, you can sacrifice it.
Yes, but the crafting benefit comes on crafting the item. So the actual act of crafting the item is when you're going to get the crafting score. And
okay.
I don't know if this is in this build or not, but we also put in experience point gain on crafting and on capture and on harvest. I don't know if that's in yet or not, though.
I don't think it is.
Okay, well, if it's not in, it's coming. So part of the challenge we've got right now is we have like 15 different versions of the game that we're cooking internally right now. So all of these different things are like backed up behind each other, and trying to figure out what goes in is a big pain in the ass. Like John's Temple stuff. What is that? Is that in yet?
Not yet.
Now, can we preview it? Could we preview it later in this show?
I think we do have some screenshots of it that we can talk about and look at
All right.
later in the show.
I'm going to hold you to that.
We should probably do another live stream though, where we actually like run through it and show it off, especially when it's live.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
And there's actually
'Cause he
multiple versions of it,
He
right?
gets real excited too.
Oh, yeah, to
about
let
things.
John
Yeah,
do his
yeah.
thing. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit today about lore. So lore's been a real interesting thing, I think, to work on through the course of this game, because it's not like we set out day one. I mean, we did have to like initially say, here's the list of gods, but the personalities of those gods was kind of ill-formed, and so it's been something that we've kind of grown into.
Right.
So usually those conversations tend to happen. Interestingly enough, it's not a design conversation. It usually happens in the art room, right? And part of that, I think, is because number one, you're super into the lore, and so you understand it, and you and I have a really good ability to kind of to gel on it real quick.
Well, also for it, not just the players, but I think for the artists especially, having that kind of lore gives us some boundaries to kind of work with to sort of like feed in some interesting details that actually make sense.
Right,
or
to
tie,
chew the scenery.
To
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I also think it's because it's helpful to have Dave and Nick in the room because they're so fast at generating concepts that they can very quickly, like, what do you think of this? And we're like, that's amazing. And it's almost always, that's really amazing.
Yeah.
But we have done a lot of exploration, some of which these guys have never even seen, that may not even surface in the game necessarily.
Well, and that's what's, I think, challenging for our game specifically is, you know, like a lot of games where they have the lore or the storyline is sort of built in as part of your experience.
Yeah.
We're a little bit disconnected because it's happening on a different level and doesn't necessarily play out,
you
know, in the game.
Yeah, we don't have quest,
right,
so.
The game is revolving around the players in the game. But this lore, I think, is one of the things that sort of like helps you as a player sort of feel connected and tie in with our world.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
I like the idea that our basic approach is that players are going to write their own stories. And what we're doing is crafting a universe that has a certain amount of believability to it so that they can use that as a jump-off point, right, for how they're going to craft their story.
Right.
So
Hashtag war stories. You need to pimp that out. Get people to share their war stories.
What is that about?
Hashtag war stories. Hashtag Crowfall game. Need to see those on the Twitter. I know that there are other people who are playing in the campaigns besides Ja and Winterblades, but you know, if Ja's the only person who's sharing his war stories, you're going to be hearing the tale of Ja for the next week. So get your war stories up. We want to see them. Share them with me. There you go. Sorry. Shameless plug.
To say Blazin.
Oh.
Share your
he does some.
Stories.
It's just
Blazin, share your war
some.
stories. Rufio, share your war stories.
Onrez does, time to time.
Onrez does.
He's pretty good about that.
Yes.
Mostly, as you can imagine, his are economy related. But I'm
fine with that. They're showing the layers of.
And I almost always retweet that stuff as well, right? When somebody tags me on it, so tag me as well, and I'll give it a little signal boost if I can.
Yeah, Onrez one time said that when you retweet things, it's like when your dad hangs your artwork on the refrigerator.
Oh, that's kind of sweet. So.
There you go. Sorry to interrupt, but I just had to get that war story mentioned in there.
So in the very beginning, when we sat down and did the Pantheon, right, we kind of came up with what the personality types were, and then we broke them out initially into order, balance, chaos. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we've done lately and how we've shifted that? Like our big charts and all that kind of stuff?
Right. So we had at one point, and we don't have an image for this, so I'm going off script a little bit. We had an image that showed the family tree sort of with Valken at the top of it.
Yeah. That's old now.
That is really old. So we were talking about how Valken fit in and how Hero fit in and where basically sort of like that the structure of how these sort of characters or the gods sort of related to each other. So I put together a couple images. I'm jumping ahead a little bit.
I'm not going to follow a script. Yeah. I don't know why they put a script in front of me. So.
And we're calling it the before corruption. And then we have the after corruption piece. So there it is. There you go. So this before corruption piece, so you can see sort of like the relationship, and you can see that sort of like horizon line of the core characters. I always think of them as the core characters.
Yeah.
Sibel and Yaga being core mostly because of how they sort of tie in and relate to Gaia. But then Arkin and Kane also sort of there's a thread there with Gaia. And so we were talking about how these characters sort of related with each other, and also sort of how they align in terms of like good, neutral, and evil. And we started talking about like what it would be interesting to put them in sort of a classic D&D sort of structure.
Right, with the you've got law versus lawful versus chaotic, and you've got good versus evil.
Right.
And what would that matrix look like? Right. That's kind of where this started.
That's where this started. Yeah. And we started moving a little bit away from the whole like the lawful good and because it didn't really fit for us as much.
So
Because our
actually, that's
core-
a good thing
yeah.
to talk about. So you can tell on this chart right here, right? Instead of it being law, balance, and chaos,
Right.
we've shifted to sun, earth, and moon, and that's
Right.
actually
And also glory, wealth, and power.
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the sun, earth, and moon shift is really cosmetic more than anything else. Underneath the covers, it's still order, balance, and chaos. The challenge that we had is, and this probably wouldn't bug anybody else in the world as much as it bugs me, but it constantly bugged me as I was doing a write-up at one point. I think it was the Frostweaver backstory. And I realized that we have a handful of the gods that are kind of sun-themed, right? And we had considered those the order gods. Whereas, and then on the other side, we had a handful of gods that were moon-themed, and we considered those the chaos gods. And that's a very, like, Star Warsian kind of thing, right? The idea that light is good and darkness is bad.
Right.
The problem is it doesn't actually work like when I'm trying to build a magic system, which, you know, again, I realize almost no one out there in the world is going to care about but me, but I care that it resonates and makes sense. It occurred to me that the sun is actually about as chaotic as you can get. It is
Right.
not orderly at all. It's a big writhing mass of sun and of flame and, you know, gas and whatever the hell, plasma, I don't know, whatever the sun's made of. And then you get the moon over here, which is basically like dead and unchanging and cold. So
It's very static,
It
yeah.
felt like to me we had a basic problem, which was that we had equated the sun with law
Yeah.
and the moon with chaos,
Right.
when in actuality they were flipped. So what I wanted to do was start to go ahead and accept that that's part of the lore, but most people won't get that when they come in because we've been trained that the good side is always light and the black hats are always bad. I mean, like that's the basic understanding that we have. So I wanted to flip it, and the way to flip it was, well, let's just not surface that. Let's bury the lead on that, and let's make it sun, earth, and moon, and that perfectly fits our pantheon, right?
Well, and I think at one point too, you had described sort of like how the universe was created,
Yep.
essentially. So we've got this Valken image that shows, and you described it to me as well, I think you should describe it because I'm a terrible storyteller. I
Are
always
you?
go like, there's this guy, and this happened at one time. No, it wasn't that guy. It was this other guy, and there was like this thing. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm terrible. You can tell.
So the first guy then was Valken.
So the first guy was Valken.
And the
Yeah,
other thing
there's the image.
was the dragon.
Was the dragon,
And that's
yeah.
you can't see it as well, but that's actually a dragon mouth. So yeah, this goes back to our origin story of the entire universe, which is that originally in the time before time, it was just this big kind of chaotic mess, and there was no real concept of time and space, but you did have these entities that were kind of more concepts than anything else that are all floating around in the ether, and somehow the concept of Valken bumps into the concept of the dragon and decides to just ravage it. He's just like, I'm going to rip its heart out, and then I'm going to steal its egg, and then I'll hang the heart over here, and that'll be the sun, and I'll hang the moon, the egg over here, and that'll be the moon, and I'm going to twist this dragon up, and that's going to create the dome of the heavens.
I
And
remember having this conversation and the horrified look on Melissa's face, like she felt so sorry for the dragon.
oh my God,
Oh,
Melissa
for
has
real?
made it
Yeah.
so much worse, by the way, now. I'm just going to say, because we were talking about the lineage of Zelina, where Zelina comes from, and because Zelina is the daughter of the dragon, and Melissa was like, well, I was assumed it was that Valken was actually
The father.
The father. And I'm like, that's even more horrible. Like,
Well, he is a big asshole.
he's a pretty terrible asshole.
Yeah,
so,
he's really-
but I like it. So I,
I
think we're
hate
gonna
him.
go with
I just
Melissa's
hate him.
for he is the worst. It's absolutely
the
true. He was
worst.
not meant to be a like a likable version of Zeus or Odin. He
Was
is.
Zeus a likable version of Zeus?
I don't
There
think he
are
had
some
dragon
stories.
But
He
he had
showed
some-
up as like a random goose at one point. It was like,
Yeah.
I got to get me some of that goose. So yeah, no, he showed up as a golden shower at one point to somebody, which I always thought was a weird thing. I don't think
Okay, so let's get back
don't
to
think it
something you know.
translates.
Let's
Well,
get back
but
to
I
what
think
Look,
the
I
point-
didn't write this mythology.
I think the
Val.
point, though, is that our pantheon is very similar to Greek mythology.
And
Yes.
it's very heavily literally Greek and Norse,
Right.
and also I took elements of Egyptian and
Right.
Celtic as well.
But
right?
we have quote unquote good and evil, but really there's no a real sense of like they're not necessarily good in terms of like the players or the humans or the characters. I mean, they
so
have
my
their
thought
own,
was
they have their
just
own
like
agenda.
like we're going to separate them in law and chaos and evil and not quite as evil was
Right.
my thought. That's the spectrum. Is they're all terrible people. Like just all of the gods are out for their own self-serving interest. So okay, so we started with this cross section thing, right? And then it occurred to us that there was an event that happened sometime later, and we're kind of fuzzy on when exactly it happened. But the one thing we do know is that Gaia died, which I just love as an idea. The idea that the Earth Mother just was killed, because you want to talk about a screwed universe. If the Earth Mother is dead, it's all over. Like, there's no saving this universe. And that's a spoiler alert for you, for people who are thinking that someday the crows will get together and solve this problem. You're not gonna. They're screwed. You're just screwed. The universe is screwed. The Earth Mother's dead. So we decided
But please play Crowfall.
you should. But hey, man, Breaking Bad. No spoilers there. But things don't always have to end pretty to be great stories. I'm just saying. Just saying. So you've got that quadrant, right? You got the four. So we decided that we would then do another version of it to say what happens after the death of Gaia. Like, how does it change the relationship and even the personalities of the gods? Because Sybil, Gaia, and Yaga are the Trinity goddess, right? So it is the maid, the matron, and the crone. They're all literally kind of three aspects of the same god. And if the middle aspect dies, that can't be good for the younger and the older aspect.
Right.
So,
well, how did you describe Yaga too? Originally, they're each part of sort of like the cycle of life.
yes,
right?
yes. So so they totally are. So the maid is represented with new growth, new birth, new life, right? And then Gaia is kind of planting and harvesting, and the entire, like, you know, the kind of mature life, right? Thriving life. And then Yaga is death and has a touch of rebirth as well, right? But she is kind of our Grim Reaper harvester, right?
But isn't inherently evil. That's just part of the cycle.
No, she wasn't inherently
right.
evil.
That's why they're on the neutral.
Yeah,
sort
but
of
post, it's not. It didn't go well for any of them, right?
Right.
So do you want to bring up the post one?
Sure.
You want to take a look
Yeah,
at
there's
that?
the
Okay, so
after. There you
in
go.
the post, what we did is we kind of took that line, that middle line, and we broke it and we shifted it. So it basically broke from a balanced spectrum into two parts. And so that breaking kind of shot it left and right? So so now you've got a line between Sybil and Yaga that lines up kind of from the sun down to that crow symbol. And then you've got a new line that is established between Valken and Alara, which is interesting. We'll talk about that one as well. But the main pivot there is on Arkan and Kane, because it broke the two of them, right?
Well, and I don't know if anyone really knows truly what happened there. I mean, there's some lore on the website that describes it like very vaguely, but I don't think it's very clear. And I don't know how many people really know about that sort of triangle.
Yeah, so we do have the things that are established in the lore for sure is that Arkan and Gaia were married, right? And they were the progenitor of many of the races. Humans obviously is a big one. The Elkin, I think, is also one as well, because Dorian is their offspring. Which I don't know. Because mythology.
Because deers.
Because deer heads are cool. Deer life. So then you have Kane, who is the twin to Arkan, born just before or just after. I can't actually remember. Somebody on the chat will probably tell us if he was the older or the younger. I can't remember which one. He is. He's slightly younger. So something happened between Gaia and Kane. And we are not sure. We know that we have now the race of Stoneborn as a result, right? Because Kane is basically, lives on the moon. Arkan lives on the sun. So Kane is very stone-oriented, right? Whereas Gaia is all tree and life and rooty, right? So you've got this race of the Stoneborn, which are stone golem-y dwarves with big tree beards. Something happened there. We have never been very specific on what it was. The dwarves seem to be... They seem to be a little ashamed by the whole thing, and as a result of that, at some point, something happened and Gaia died. So that is something that I purposefully left very open. Is did Was there an accident? Did Kane kill her? Did she die in childbirth? Did Archon get really pissed off? Or Archon get pissed off and he killed her? Did she kill herself? Like, we've left it open. We don't know.
Or is it something related to the hunger?
Or is it something? Well, we know definitely that's when the hunger started.
Right.
And that's when the world started to get infected. So I kind of had purposely left that open because I thought it would be great to have some big glaring holes in the mythology to give players a chance to fill in those holes and argue why they believe they were right.
Right.
Right? So.
Can we bring that after piece up too again? There's something else that I think was interesting as we were looking at this. We broke them apart, so there's nobody sort of on the neutral line any longer. You know, we're breaking these characters up, and you can see these connecting points right here, these lines that thread these characters to each other. But then, as we moved Kronos, Valken, and Yaga sort of out to the sides also, it created this little pyramid in the middle, and there's something we haven't actually explored in the game yet, but there's something we've explored in concept that we've never actually even talked about.
Which is the Watcher?
Which is the Watcher.
Okay.
Yeah,
do you have any of those
There's a Watcher. There should be a Watcher image
in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of the early ones. What I liked about this shot is it looks like the cover of like a Michael Moorcock novel from the 1970s, which is just freaking awesome. In fact, I actually thought it was one recently. I forgot that this is Dave's, right?
Yes.
I forgot. I was like, I remember that image from some book. Oh no, wait, that's just a Dave.
That's ours.
That's ours. Yeah,
Just a Dave. Just a Dave
image. So yeah, so the three original gods, right? So we have Valken, the Allfather. Yaga was actually his sister, and Kronos is his brother. So he's the first, but they're the ones that weren't really. They're the elder gods. They were not born of Valken. They're basically born at the same time. So does that mean they were also entities, or did they jump out of his head or something? I don't know. Never has been said. But that kind of also elevates them as another trinity. And so the sliding these things around, we already had this idea of this big pyramid thing that Kronos was sending to effectively watch every world as it dies. Like, his job is now, he owns time and space, and so here we are at the end of time. I guess I should chronicle this because somebody might care someday. And so that was his thing, was just kind of chronicling the end of the universe. And so we had this idea of the pyramid, the Watcher as a pyramid. We hadn't done anything with it.
Not really.
We have that one. You probably didn't put this in there because I didn't think about it. But the one shot that we had with the pyramid, the three sides with the three eyes.
You can kind of see it in the top of that image. There's one side of it, but we did explore a little bit more. The three different sides would sort of represent the past, present, and future.
Yeah, and then we also had one of them was like overgrown with vines, and one of them was made of stone, and one of them was made of metal, which was kind of cool, tying into our sun, earth, and moon theme again. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff there for us to jump off into. We're kind of squaring off the property to say, okay, well, eventually we might build a wing onto the building over here. I don't think that a lot of this stuff will be surfaced by launch, but knowing it now means that we can kind of angle ourselves and also not paint ourselves in a corner to be able to expand into that later.
Well, also, I think going back to why this is meaningful for the player. For me, I found myself, every time I would get into the game, I'm just like, whatever random faction banner pops up, I'll just go into that. Because I really didn't have any real connection to any one faction or another.
Sure.
So I think this will help you to sort of identify, if you think of Game of Thrones, there's these different houses and there's these different characters, and generally you kind of pick a favorite, or you pick somebody you feel kind of connected with, or you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's a way for you to feel a part of this world, and to give you a sense of, okay, well, if we have sun, earth, and moon, and we have glory, wealth, and power. So loosely, I mean, you could go after all three. You could be someone who's like, I just want to be sort of a merchant prince and create this wealth economy in my EK. Maybe you would pick then the earth faction to kind of follow in one of those gods, because they tie more closely to sort of that part of the game.
Yeah, sure.
Right? You're not necessarily tied to. You don't have to.
You don't have to.
That,
yeah, it's
but
there
it gives
for people
you
who
sort of
want it, and the people who don't can kind of.
Yeah, you can pick whatever
worry.
you want, but it's a good, I feel way for players to sort of feel connected with this world, and find out a little bit more about the gods, find out how they're connected, and it gives you somebody sort of to attach to.
Yeah, I know. You mentioned the glory, wealth, and power, and that actually was kind of a happy accident, right?
Yeah.
Is once we had set up sun, earth, and moon as kind of our major celestial spheres, it occurred to, was it Debbie Sue? I remember, did you see, who said it? originally?
What's
Was it
that?
Debbie Sue who mapped it to Glory, Wealth, and Power?
Loosely,
Maybe.
yes.
So, because I actually think it fits perfectly, right?
Yeah.
Because the sun obviously can have an element of it, which is glory, right? You've got
Right.
the idea. I mean, whenever they do like religious paintings, they always do like majestic halos coming off of the head, right?
Right.
There's a definite like idea of the sun being glorious, right? Wealth fits perfectly to earth because you have the bounty of the earth, right?
Right.
A cornucopia is overflowing with the
Right.
bounty of the earth, and that's the idea of wealth. And then lastly, the moon has long been associated with power, usually dark power. But so those things, I mean, you got werewolves, and there's a whole bunch of things that tie in there as well. So I actually love that the original idea that we had of what are my 3 major beats that we're going for, glory, wealth, and power, map perfectly to our celestial spheres of sun, earth, and moon. That's
like we
just
did it on purpose.
It's like we did on purpose. That was not that part particularly was not originally intended, but it actually works really, really well.
It works really well.
So
Now, somebody has asked, where does Hero fit in with all of this?
So
Very good
that is
question.
an excellent question. So
that
bring
was
up the
Mandalore.
chart
Good
again.
job,
Actually, this
Mandalore.
is going to be kind of interesting. Bring up the after chart, if you would. So the after chart, you will notice, doesn't have Hero on it anymore.
Neither does the before, actually.
And the before doesn't either. So a few things as we've really delved into this have kind of come out of it. And one of them is that Hero has been downgraded to a demigod, right? Hero is not actually a god of Valken because he was born as a mortal, right? He's not of the line of Valken at all.
Yeah.
He's not of the line of dragon, so he is outside the normal realm. So the comic that we did way back in the day that we're going to go back and revisit talks about the kind of basic arc of a crow, right? So I think we're going to go back now and fill that out to have more depth and information and make that into the story of Hero, the first
The
crow.
very first crow.
And
Yeah.
so that was the basic thought there, is that initially, for whatever reason, he of all the mortals was chosen to be blessed / cursed to live life after life after life after life, fighting endlessly on behalf of the gods, which I
Yeah.
think is a really kind of cool idea. That blows out then into, once that curse or blessing was established, it became a loophole that all of the gods could use to start selecting champions, and that's where our crows come from.
Right.
So for that reason, he fell out of the pantheon. We're going to need to now create another area, which is for demigods. It does mean, though, that it opens up an opportunity for us post-launch to start coming up with other demigods, which I think would be really cool as
Yeah.
well, right? You've got the demigods is a cool concept, right? The Perseus, Hercules,
Right.
kind of, these are
Maybe
mortals.
players could elevate to become demigods.
And that would be pretty
in
cool.
The future.
Absolutely. That would be something that would be really cool for us to grow
Val's
into.
shaking her head like,
Yeah.
please, why did you just
See,
do
this
that?
is how it starts, folks. It's Melissa's fault. That's scope creep. It starts in art, and that's where so that is actually a really good point, though, is if somebody makes an idea that they bring up that's really good, and then the art team starts to actually draw it out, it becomes very, very hard to resist putting it into the game. So that's why our new mantra is post-launch. That sounds
Well-
great, and we will explore that post-launch. So...
Well, but that is something we have sort of talked about. I mean, the new temple, which I'm kind of jumping into a little bit.
Of course you are.
It's not quite done yet. We're working on it right now. John O'Neill is finishing up right now, and you will start seeing it in the game pretty soon. So in the God's Reach, there's going to be a pristine version of this temple. So it is outside of the reach of the hunger and generally more intact. And the architecture there is of the Stoneborn. They're the most ancient race.
Yep.
And so there are these structures that you'll see around the world that are built by them.
Which, being the most ancient race, by the way, implies that something was going on with Yaga and with Gaia and Kane for a while.
Right.
It's not. It wasn't a new thing that happened just before the cataclysm.
Sure.
It implies that maybe that, but time doesn't make a lot of sense with the gods anyway. Things are not necessarily ordered in time. So, are you going to show this new temple, Ms. Preston?
We do have a couple images. I think we should showcase it a little bit more later on, but we do have a couple images that John gave us.
Cool.
That are sort of works in progress. I think there's a few of them. There we go.
Oh, so these
there's
are
some
concepts. These
Yeah,
are some
the
early concepts. So you guys have been playing actually in a gray box version
Right.
of the temple for a while.
Right.
So this will look familiar to you.
So this is kind of what we're calling sort of the Colosseum part of it. And so there's the work in progress right now.
So that's the 3D one.
Yeah. And
So
then
you can see it actually, it's pretty true to the concept. Now This one though, oh, this is still the destroyed, right? Because you've got all the ground poking up through it, and then the stuff
So
like that.
we're working on having a differentiation between them, but we also have the notion that each faction will have a slightly different looking temple to begin with too. So
Sun, Earth, and Moon.
the Sun,
themed.
Earth, and Moon. So right. So we have, this is one of the market images. So this is what the market would look like on the other side of the temple. So this will be the Earth one, and then and I think the last one was the Sun, and that's the Moon one. So we'll theme them differently. You'll have the faction banners hanging everywhere, and they'll have just slightly different
Propping
decor,
out, right?
Propping out, yeah. And then we have
And then the god
idea-
statues. That's going to be
Right.
significantly different,
That's true.
right?
I'm glad you said that. Yeah. So each one of them will have the giant god statues sort of in the middle of them. And if you're playing right now, you've probably seen one or two of them already. So that's Arkan. And that's the bell. So we'll have all the sun gods, all the moon gods, all the earth gods. Dorian. Yeah, they're underway right
The
now.
Yaga
We've
one's
got
awesome.
a few of them.
I love
already done.
the what's it, the Maeve concept one is really cool.
The Maeve one is gonna be
that's
probably
really cool.
one
Is
of my
that in here
favorites.
too?
That's Alara. She's actually done. Frank made this one. She's amazing. That one's super cool. So I was going to get at was, and in the campaign worlds, there will be a destroyed or more ruined version.
Yes, correct.
Because that is within the reach of the hunger, and it's got a little bit more, it's falling apart. It looks like it's been degraded a little bit, so that you'll have sort of a visual sort of distinction
right?
Which
Yeah.
world you're in, or which band you're in.
I like that too, because it immediately reminds me of which type of world I'm in, right?
Right.
Immediately I'm like, oh, I'm okay, this is God's Reach, this is
Yeah.
kind of my in-between spot, or oh yeah, that's right, I'm in a campaign world.
Yeah.
So I need to, I think that stepping in that place, your general stress level should go up a little bit.
You mentioned the hunger, we've talked about it a few times, and Nocturnal Demise had a question about how does the hunger threaten the gods? How are the gods affected by the hunger?
So the idea that we had, and we did this way back, right, is we had the world bands, that one image that had like the different areas of the worlds, and the EKs were on the outside. They were the furthest from the hunger, so they
Right.
were the most protected.
And then
My thought
God's
is that
Reach.
that band is probably where, the gods are kind of hanging at the outskirts of the universe, because they're like, oh shit, I'm going to back up from that as far as I can get.
Yeah.
So the God's Reach, the idea there is, that is the furthest extent of their power. It's just inside of where they can stave off the hunger. And then beyond that, everything else, which I think is a better use of the term God's Reach than what we'd originally intended it for, right?
Yeah.
It is still within the reach of the gods. So the gods are basically screwed by it and scared by it, is the basic thought. So at some point, the thought that we had was that Valken went past God's Reach, actually went to go all right, children, settle down, I'm gonna go deal with this shit, and basically has never come back. So the fact that he still is in theory answering prayers, you can still draw magic off of him, implies that he's not completely dead. But then again, Gaia's spells are still working too. So my thought on that was just that the gods are so powerful that it takes a while for their blood to cool. With Gaia, literally her blood is the lava inside the earth. It is the molten rock under the earth. And the Stoneborn were tasked with keeping those fires going.
Right. Yeah.
And those are also slowly cooling down and turning to dust as the hunger takes everything over. So that was the basic thought there, is the gods are also screwed by it. They don't know what to do about it. And in typical childlike fashion, what they should be doing is getting together and saying, we got a big problem, guys, we got to all deal with this. But instead, they're squabbling over, the inheritance.
Like my sisters, my ungrateful, horrible sisters.
That's not where I was going, but sure, it's a common tale. Tale as old as time, right? So okay, so there you go. What else do we have? Did we get to show any of the other? Did we show any of the screenshots of the temple?
Yeah, there were a couple that were mixed in.
Oh, were there?
To that, yeah. That's why I think once we actually get it fully in the game and
Okay, there you go.
out,
So
yeah. So there's
that-
a couple of statues. There's Valken and Arkan. So this would be an example of the Sun Temple. You can see the banners that are hanging up, and that sort of tree root sort of structure in the background is where the rune gates are at. And so do you want to explain sort of the original concept behind why these roots are kind of exposing and breaking away and out of these walls.
Right. Okay. So that is a thought that we had about. So we've got the dwarves, right? And the dwarves, or the Stoneborn. The thought that we had is that they actually have stone for flesh, and that their nervous system is a series of roots. So if you were to break one apart, it wouldn't be filled with blood. It would actually just be a bunch of stone, maybe some mud, and a big root structure that kind of goes and that's how they articulate. And then it's kind of popping out here on their face, like it's just kind of growing through.
Yeah.
And so you can see that. And actually, it's come out really cool. Like the characters look really awesome.
Yeah.
You can see it even more so in the Sentinels, which
Right.
we have shown once before in the past, but have not made it into the game yet.
Right.
So that shot. Can you bring up the shot again that had the brazier in the middle with the two statues?
The last shot.
The last one, I think it was the last one, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the thoughts that we had is that we're going to move those braziers. Well, you can actually see braziers at the base of the two statues there, right? So eventually I would like the sacrifice system to, right now it clearly wasn't, it's clearly not final because you walk up and it's a picture of Malachi. It's not like everybody in the game is going to be sacrificing to Malachi. So what I wanted to have was separate braziers for you to sacrifice to the god of your choice, and that you can get some kind of cool buff or something out of doing that.
Right.
And then in the middle there, we're going to put the Sentinel. Do you want to talk about them? Did we have any screenshots of them?
I don't know that I put any images of the Sentinel because I didn't know if we wanted to talk, or if you actually even talked about that yet.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't give you any warning.
Okay. So feel free to talk about Sentinel.
You talk about the Sentinel.
Well, so each temple will have a sentinel that's themed to that temple, and so we, man, I wish I did put concepts of them in there because they really look really cool. Trust me. But each one of them is a little bit different. They are themed to the Sun, Earth, and Moon temples.
And they're Stoneborn.
And they're
kind of
Stoneborn.
important,
Yeah.
But they're super, super ancient.
You're right, and they'll sort of I mean, they will be the ones who you kind of interact with initially.
Yeah,
right?
so that was the thought, is
Yeah.
that this gives us a place that eventually, we have nothing right now for players to interact with other than like vendors, is we're going to want
Right.
something,
Yeah,
right?
that's why I
And-
wasn't sure if we were ready to.
Yeah, well, and what that's going to be, I'm not ready to talk about because
Yeah.
we're not quite sure yet, right?
Right.
But if we want to tie in stuff that deals with the gods in the campaigns, which I definitely want to do, I want to be able to have the gods have more of an impact in the game.
Yeah.
They needed some way to interact with the player, and so we went down a couple roads with this. If you recall, we did some testing, like how should the gods interact with the players? It seemed very pedestrian to have like just voice of Malachi in my head saying, hey, go do this mission for me. Like that seemed really goofy. And then we did a test at one point, which I thought was actually pretty damn cool, where we had Doggett animate one of the statues.
Oh,
You remember
yeah.
that?
Well, we were
it was
looking
very
at,
Clash of the
Clash of
Titans.
the Titans.
It's like
Talos.
This big old statue turning and looking at you. It was actually really cool. So that may make an appearance at some point later, but I'd like to save it because I think if it happened all the time, it would look like an animatronic Santa, and I just think that would be bad. But occasionally doing it
You
would
walk
be
up
kinda,
and they just kind of do
hello, I'm a robot. Yeah, that's not what we
Welcome
wanted.
to the State Fair of Texas.
We're going to have the sacrifice braziers be sacrificing to that particular god.
Yeah.
If we do end up doing, and I don't think that we would make it specific, like you could choose. So you could walk up and check the different gods and say, oh, this one is offering this right now. I'm interested in sacrificing there or whatever. So that it's still a little fuzzy. We haven't quite figured out the details on that.
Yeah.
I've got that design challenge we hit all the time where I'm like, I think it should be really cool if they're themed to the god. But then my choice is now about the buff that I'm going to get or the reward, not the god, and I hate that.
Yeah.
So it may be that what we have to do is have them give you a currency that you can then spend so the reward is disconnect. I don't know yet. We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea, and the new temple looks awesome. So kudos to you and to
Mr.
Nick
John O'Neill.
and to John O'Neill
Yeah.
on that. And actually, Rudy and Aaron, like everybody, there's a lot of people. Oh, the
That's true.
statues are
Yeah.
the character
It takes
guys.
a
So
village.
It does.
it takes a village of artists.
Yeah, but it will be
So-
coming soon.
In the sense of history, how long has Gaia been dead?
So
Since the beginning of the world, or was it at the start of the apocalypse?
it was definitely the start of the apocalypse. How long ago that happened, though, I've left it purposefully vague because I just didn't. I felt like it was one of those things that was better to not specifically answer.
Right.
Like I have a general feeling in storytelling, especially when you're trying to build a mythology, that too much detail it's like cilantro. Just too much of it spoils the whole meal. Like the whole thing is just done. I'm done
I'm a
now.
big fan of cilantro.
Up to a point, though, right?
I don't know.
Would you just eat it? Well, you'll eat
I
a stick of
have.
fried butter, so you know. So yeah, it's just too much of it. I thought would. Well, Highlander is like my go-to example on this. The first movie was amazing, and they're like, now let's explain things. No, no, let's go back to when that didn't exist and that wasn't a thing.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah, I agree.
So we do have the idea that the Mother Church is based off of Arkan, right, as the sun god.
sun.
And their kind of deep and dirty secret is that their prayers are not really prayers. Their prayers are spells. And that they stole the pyromancy from the desert elves, right, from the sun elves. So we've gone that far, but I don't think necessarily we've gone much further into the, okay, well, let's look at those elves. We have sun elves, we have moon elves. What's their kind of thing? Like which gods are they specifically drawing their powers from? So I guess we need to probably explore it a little bit. I don't know that I want to give a specific answer on it right now, because we haven't really sat down and talked through what does the universe look like, from an elven standpoint.
Right.
So it's probably a good idea to have that conversation.
We should have that. Yeah, we should take a look.
How will backer rewards like the name of fallen hero be integrated into the game?
They already are. So we already have, as campaign worlds come up, the random generator grabs from a giant table that is filled out with names that were actually submitted already by you guys. So I think it's not like there was a timer on the submissions. You can still submit. I think it probably goes to customer support. Gordon's going to come back later and tell me you told him the wrong thing, and now you've overloaded customer support, and I'm going to say, oops. But I think you can just put them in, and we can shuffle the names in, and then when new campaigns come up, it just grabs out of that list and pushes them in. So I think we've got the kingdoms in, and I think like Forest and other parcels like that. I don't think we have the name of fallen monarch. I don't think that's a thing yet. So when eventually I want the procedural world generator to grow into history as well, so that it starts actually dropping hints and information about this keep, who actually did it belong to and why is it here, like that kind of stuff. That's where the monarch stuff would come in, but we'll get to it. In the meantime, I'll probably just shuffle those names in as well so that we can make sure we fulfill the rewards.